A routine traffic stop turns into a nightmare when a racist cop detains a black woman, only to realize she's married to the most powerful person in the department. What happens next will leave you speechless. In the quiet town of Springfield, Illinois, Officer Jake Reynolds had a habit of targeting black drivers under the guise of routine traffic stops. His actions were rarely questioned, and his badge gave him a sense of invincibility. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake spotted a sleek black SUV driving through a predominantly white neighborhood. Without hesitation, he flipped on his lights and pulled the car over. Behind the wheel was Maya Johnson, a confident and composed woman who had just finished a long day at work. Jake approached her car, his tone immediately aggressive, accusing her of speeding and weaving through lanes, claims that were completely false. Maya, knowing her rights, calmly questioned his reasoning, but Jake's response was to escalate the situation. He demanded she step out of the vehicle, his hand resting ominously on his holstered weapon. Maya, aware of the dangers black women often face in these situations, hesitated but complied, her heart racing as Jake began to pat her down in full view of passing cars. What Jake didn't know was that Maya wasn't just any civilian. She was the wife of Police Chief Marcus Johnson, a man known for his no-nonsense approach to justice and his commitment to rooting out corruption within the department. As Jake continued to humiliate Maya, a neighbor who recognized her quickly called Chief Johnson, who was at home waiting for his wife. The tension in the air was palpable, and the situation was about to take a dramatic turn. This wasn't just another traffic stop. It was a collision of power, prejudice, and the consequences of unchecked bias. As Maya stood on the side of the road, her hands trembling but her voice steady, she repeated her question to Officer Jake Reynolds. "What exactly am I being detained for?" Jake, visibly irritated, barked back. "You fit the description of a suspect we're looking for." It was a flimsy excuse one had used before, but this time it was about to backfire. Maya, a high school principal known for her poise under pressure, refused to be intimidated. She calmly stated, "I've done nothing wrong, and you have no right to treat me this way." Meanwhile, the neighbor who had recognized Maya was already on the phone with her husband, Police Chief Marcus Johnson. Marcus, a former Marine with a reputation for fairness and integrity, listened in disbelief as the neighbor described the scene. Without hesitation, he grabbed his badge and jacket and headed straight to the location. Back at the traffic stop, Jake's frustration grew as Maya continued to assert her rights. He threatened to arrest her for obstruction, a charge he often used to silence those who questioned him. But Maya stood her ground, her mind racing as she thought about her two young daughters and the example she wanted to set for them. Just as Jake reached for his handcuffs, the sound of a siren cut through the tension. Chief Johnson's patrol car pulled up, and he stepped out, his presence commanding immediate attention. Jake froze, his face paling as he realized who Maya was. The look of shock and fear in his eyes was unmistakable. Marcus approached slowly, his gaze locked on Jake. "What's going on here, officer?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Jake stumbled over his words, trying to justify his actions, but it was clear he had no valid reason for detaining Maya. The power dynamic had shifted, and the consequences of Jake's actions were about to unfold in a way he never expected. The moment Chief Marcus Johnson stepped out of his car, the atmosphere shifted. Jake Reynolds, who had been so confident just seconds ago, now looked like a man who had realized he had made a catastrophic mistake. Marcus didn't raise his voice or make a scene. He didn't have to. His presence alone was enough to make Jake's authority crumble. "Officer Reynolds," Marcus said, his tone steady but icy. "Care to explain why my wife is being detained?" Jake stammered, his words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. I thought she matched a suspect description, sir. I was just doing my job." Marcus glanced at Maya, who stood tall despite the humiliation she had endured, and then back at Jake. "Your job. Marcus repeated, his voice cutting through the night air. Your job is to protect and serve, not to harass innocent people based on the color of their skin. Jake's face flushed with a mix of fear and shame as Marcus continued, step aside. Now. Jake obeyed without hesitation, his bravado completely shattered. Marcus walked over to Maya, his expression softening as he gently asked if she was okay. She nodded, but the anger in her eyes was unmistakable. Marcus then turned back to Jake, his voice low but firm. You're done here. Go back to the station and wait for me. We'll discuss this further. As Jake drove off, his hands gripping the wheel tightly, Marcus and Maya stood together in silence for a moment. The weight of what had just happened hung heavy in the air. But this wasn't just about one traffic stop. It was about a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for far too long. The next day, Marcus called an emergency meeting with the department's leadership. Jake was given a choice: resign immediately or face a full investigation into his conduct. He chose to resign, but the fallout didn't stop there. Marcus used the incident as a catalyst to implement mandatory bias training and stricter accountability measures for all officers. The town of Springfield would never be the same. If this story made you think, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life moral stories that hit hard.